Hey folks, welcome. Bruce McDonald, Talamanca Review. 9:54 p.m. Saturday, the 16th of June. I'm actually a little bit busy these days, like with work. I have two annual deadlines. One is the end of June and one is the end of December. But I like to do the podcasting because it's extremely relaxing for me. And tonight I'm just going to do like a less focused, a less charged up or premeditated, or I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. Probably a little bit less intense in some ways, because when I get into my zone and I'm talking about the book, the flow of the podcasts is very intense. And tonight I'm just going to relax and talk a little bit and sort of finish up with what everything I opened up in The Devil in Us. And then I'm going to talk about some stuff that's not in the book, but is relative to the book. Okay, so if you followed me this far, you can clearly see that we're in the biggest transformation the human being has gone through in recorded history. Okay? Now, from my understanding, it's not the biggest thing we've gone through. I mean, we've gone through bigger things in the past. I wrote a book called The Galactic Historian. Don't buy it. If you want a copy of that book, send me an email at seenthattinker@gmail or protonmail.com, one or the other, or yahoo.com. I have seen that tinker across the board, by the way. And if nobody's asking me, but I can hear you thinking. It's from a 1968 Cormac McCarthy novel called Outer Darkness or Outer Dark. And it's just a line that just keeps coming up in the novel. Have you seen that tinker? And if you want to understand what the line means, I'm going to insist that you read the book. So that's all I got to say about that. But yeah, so if you do want to read that book, just send me an email and I'll send you a PDF of it. I have the original galleys because I wrote the book. Um, and basically, it chronicles about 55 million years of events on this planet. Now, is it 100% accurate? I don't think it's possible for anything to be 100% accurate when you're dealing with speculative interpretation through consciousness, okay? You can get consciousness and consciousness derived information, whether it be psychic, clairvoyant, channeled, derived from remote viewing. You can get certain generalities right, but you're not going to get the level of specificity right that you would get just from having an experience in the 3D reality you're living in and incarnated into in a body. Okay? But that aside, I feel that it's a very provocative book, and Andrew was a very capable Akashic record reader. Unfortunately, he went quite dark and started killing people and psychically killing people. Attacked me and my son, and I decapitated him with a couple articles. And I heard from a friend, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, that he's not really here anymore. His body is here. There's a lot of people being taken out now. A lot of bad people are being taken out now. There's a great behind the scenes. There's a spiritual rebalancing going on. I feel it's necessary to say some of these things because of the darkness of what I cover. So let's start there now that we're sort of done Event Horizon, and I can just sort of riff and do a jazz podcast, some Chet Baker. Almost blue. Sorry, I shouldn't sing. I'm practically tone deaf. I'm really good at mantra, though. Really good at mantra. And mantra as an art form, you can get tones inside of tones in mantra. And I've been doing mantra for 40 years. So, but I can't sing, man. I mean, even Chinese people tell me to sit down at a karaoke, and they give everybody a chance. But it's like listening to a dying cat with me at a karaoke. So I'll spare you the music. Anyways, the point is, I'm going to do a sort of a jazz podcast tonight and have a little bit of fun. Maybe let myself be a little bit more acerbic, a little bit more impolite to certain figures out there in public. So the point is, now is the time to engage all of the darkness, and you got to understand it because it's part of the passage of going through what we're going through. Some people don't deal with it, but they've already gone through it and they don't need to deal with it. They've done the alchemical work and they've transitioned all this negativity into a great spiritual leap forward, which is what its utility is, by the way. Okay? And so, if you bear with me and you read the book and you go through the podcasts, it is my sincerest wish that you too will be able to alchemize this information at the Heart Center and transmute it into purposeful and intentful meditation and prayer. Okay? You know, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about what prayer is, and I don't think people really understand what prayer is. I certainly don't think the Muslims understand, you know, dropping down on the mats 5 times a day and sticking their asses up in the air like jackasses, prostrating to some invisible archon or whatever the hell it is. You know, this is what I mean about being a little bit more acerbic, not really pulling my punches and sort of saying what I feel like saying. But there's a lot of really stupid stuff in Islam, okay? Really stupid stuff. Now, in their defense, they're extremely well protected as we go through this very dark time. Extremely well protected. And if I see one spiritual genius in Islam, that's it. It's almost like Muhammad foreshadowed this time we're going through now. And I mean, in every way. In every way. I mean, if I were a father now and I had a teenage daughter, I'd kind of want her to be in a burqa the way women are treated now. There's just one thing off the top of my head. I would want a man to be raised in the values of Islam and preserve himself for marriage, because so much energy is wasted in our youth now in these ridiculous, whatever it is, you know, the sex or whatever it is. So where am I going with all this? Yeah. So this is what we went through in the 20th century. And so now what's going to happen is the dark side has played its hand. And the dark side they're really stupid. And there's no other way to say it. I mean, it might have been a fun incarnation to be some Sith Lord in the dark side in like 1780 or something, or, you know, when the 1776, when the Illuminati was formed and everything. And, you know, they're starting their plans and they're a well-formed secret society, and that would have been the time to be in the club. Now it just sucks, because now it's coming time for them to execute all their plans. A lot of people don't have the stomach for it. The amount of defections is extraordinary. The number of people being directly contacted by the divine and asked to realign themselves with love is everybody. And if they don't, they're being destroyed. They're being, I guess you could say, called back in a sense, or disassembled as an individuated consciousness. All of their memory and all of their experience is being taken away from them. What happens to them after that, I don't know. There's a number of stories out there. One is you go back to the beginning in a new creation and come all the way up through the minerals and everything again. Billions of years of incarnation. Some people like Ashayana Dean, who I do respect, and she wrote the book, the Voyager series, and it's an incredibly complex and almost mathematical system for understanding ascension, and the level of detail is astounding. Okay? She says that if this happens to you and you get sort of disintegrated as an individuality, you go back to source as stardust and all of your individuality is lost. And for that aspect of the creator to re-individuate itself, it has to send it back down into creation again. Basically the same story, told in a slightly different way. So we do live in a world with consequences. It's a hologram, it's a game, it's all of the things you hear it, but there are consequences. I mean, you can go so dark that, you got to stay after school, but staying after school in the cosmic sense is it's heavy, man. Heavy. It's billions of years of laborious incarnation. Okay? And we've all done it. Okay? If you're listening to me, you've done it. You've been everything on this planet, or everything on another planet, and you were brought here to finish. Okay? This is a remarkable place, this planet, just an absolutely remarkable place. So yesterday I spoke a lot about gratitude. I live in a state of gratitude. Oh, hold on, let me finish with prayer. So the best prayers are the prayers that are issued from a wounded heart center, because those are the ones that get to the ears of the beings and the agents working on behalf of the divine that can and will help you, because they're sincere, because they come. The pain, the disturbance in your heart, the anguish you feel is the frequency by which a prayer is returned. Okay, I know. You if you wanted to be really facetious or really turn that on its head, you could maybe say, well, Bruce, that makes God sadomasochistic. He enjoys our pain. Not really. I mean, the pain extracted in the rituals for the energy for the reptoids and the draconians and things like that, and that's who they're serving, by the way. If I haven't been clear about that, I just say extraterrestrial usually, but it's generally the reptoids behind all the rituals, and harvesting that fear and terror energy. It's an astral food for them. It's like an astral champagne for them. Okay, we become their narcotic. Our psychic energy is their narcotic. The physical energy, like the adrenochrome and stuff, that's used by the incarnate humans and the physically incarnate reptilians, or the reptilians co-occupying bodies with a human. That goes on a lot too, and it's not split personality. They coexist in the body. So the most meaningful prayers are the ones that come from a heart that is wounded. So if you've read The Devil in Us, or you've gone through this entire series of podcasts from The Devil, Our Last Free Breath, 1947. Geez, I can't even remember my own chapters. Blood, The Human Devil, and Event Horizon, not in the correct order. 6 chapters, each about 7,000 words in the book. That's about 42,000 words altogether, 6 times 7. Then you've taken in a lot of stuff. I've put you through a lot. Now, if you feel that disturbance in your solar plexus, that's your prayer energy. That is like nothing up there, out there, around us, because it's not really up there. It's just everywhere, but at a different frequency. Nothing is going to listen to a banal prayer, an insincere prayer. Hi, God, it's me, Bruce. Can I have world peace, please? And could we have everybody be a little bit more tolerant, please, God? Nobody's going to respond to that prayer. It's not charged, okay? It's not charged, okay? The prayer that is immediately heard is the one with, I need to know if all of this stuff Bruce has put me through is true. I feel, I just feel so uncomfortable in my heart. If I didn't know they were doing this to children, I didn't know there was a massive depopulation event, and you really feel it, and you maybe cry and you go, why is this allowed to happen? Why is this allowed? That is the prayer that gets heard, because it advances your consciousness, and it's sincere, because it's underwritten with absolute genuine emotion. You've been reduced to an almost completely vulnerable state, and this vulnerability stripping away is indicative of the ego being stripped away. And the ego is your conception of what reality is or was. And you know what? If I took that conception away from you in the book or in these podcasts, I've done you a favor. Whether you realize it right now or not, I've done you a huge favor. Okay? Now you take that energy and you offer it up and you say, please. You don't even almost have to have words. You just go like this and go like this. Like, this is my feeling. And I don't understand these feelings. I don't understand why the world could get this way. And then you'll get the return prayer. You'll get the information coming into your timeline. You'll get the dreams. You'll get your prayer answered one way or another, or several ways simultaneously, because that's a real prayer. Okay? I don't often talk about prayer because I think most prayer is completely phony, unless the way the people here pray is real. But these are the people I live with are simple, earthbound people. Okay? You say, hi, how are you today? And they say, muy bien, gracias a Dios. Very well, thanks be to God. And they mean it. They mean it. Okay? You don't often hear that in the world. I think this is one of the few places in Latin America that still has that super strong heart center. It's one of the things that drew me here. You know, it's kind of beautiful to live with and kind of beautiful to be around. I'm very lucky to be here, okay? Now, not everybody has it. When they go bad, they go real bad. They join the Sinaloa cartel. They start murdering people for territory or position in the drug trade, and they go bad, right? But when they're good here. Really good. So, just have a quick sip of coffee here. So that's why I write these books, because I went through it as part of all of these things as part of my spiritual journey. I found tremendous benefit in it. Tremendous benefit. So I'm sharing it with you. Now, this made me think today as I was working up to doing a podcast, and it made me think of all the nonsense that's out there. Like I really don't want to pick on anybody, but it's hard not to, right? Like, I'm Bruce, and it just is what it is. You know, so let's take a look at this wunderkid of the New Age movement. And coincidentally, she's living in Costa Rica now. She's been here a number of years. She lives in a town called Atenas, which I lived in a number of years ago before I came to the wilderness. I came to the mountains. But here I'm referring to Teal Swan. Okay, so let's just take a look at this.
This is very important, by the way. In relationships, we cannot expect the other person to live in pain for us. Do you know all those videos that I was doing on like the suffer so I can feel love dynamic? This is such an issue with people. There's almost this attitude of these are my things, and if you can't live with it, then you don't love me. So like being with me means being in pain, okay? And I expect it in this way. That's not loving. Loving is to be like, look, if I have a serious hardcore boundary and that causes you serious amounts of pain, I don't want to keep you stuck in it. I just can't change it. This is very when they're taking that radical ownership and they're following what it is that truly lights them up, they're actually creating things from a completely different space. When a human being creates from intrinsic motive versus extrinsic motive, the things that are created are you can't even compare the two. It's like in another stratosphere, you know. It's like somebody creating, Tesla, right? Versus being like, yeah, I went into a car company and then I climbed the ladder and now I'm a manager and now like it's a different game, okay? It's a totally different game. So the more ownership that a person takes over their own education, the more they're playing this completely radical different game where they're using the energy that is inherent within them to actually bend the time-space reality to them. It changes everything that a person is matched to in terms of their future and career. Very big deal. When they're taking that radical ownership and they're following what it is that truly lights them up,
Okay, so what is it that bothers me about this? It's entitlement spirituality. It's that upper middle class, largely white, and if you watch one of her events and they pan out onto the audience, it's all a bunch of white people. And look, no, I'm not going woke, okay? It's not like that. But it's entitled, it's all about relationships, manifesting, negative manifestation, um, um, and all of this stuff. And I'm like, hey, girl, the fucking world is falling apart, man. They're depopulating billions of people. You're claiming to be a public facing spiritual teacher. Do you think maybe you should address this? Like, what the fuck? So, a lot of times, I kind of know people are full of shit just by what they're talking about. Okay? There's no market for these teachings other than her purse. That what she's talking about is it's going to be of no utility over the next 5-10 years. No, you want to spiritually teach people now? Teach them how to garden. Teach them how to bake bread over fire in case they don't have electricity or a stove, a gas stove. Teach them how to eat rice and beans. Teach them how to be happy with nothing. Don't teach them relationship dynamics that are only for like people making $100,000 or more, because that's what all this bullshit is. You know, this is what did Bartzis in as well. Is they get in, and I think she's quite well off. I think she's kind of like, you know, a Joel Olson in the New Age movement, and the New Age movement is full of these people. They're not giving you any real. There are no fucking shortcuts. You want to know? Meditate. Meditate an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours a day if you can. Not all in one sitting. Dedicate yourself to it. Completely change your perception. Open yourself up to first internal mystical experience, and then secondly, the manifestation of miracles in your timeline. It'll all happen. Everybody who seriously applies themselves reports the same findings, including me. Okay? But they don't. These people, like Teal Swan, they don't tell you the truth. This is about taking spirituality and making it serve you, making the soul serve the ego, not the ego dissipate so the soul can come in. That's what bothers me about it. Okay? In other words, it's inversed. Okay? And there's dozens and dozens of these people out there now doing this distraction nonsense. Like the UFO movement is a huge distraction story now. It's not that UFO, you all know I believe in UFOs. I wrote a book about them. I spent a few years talking daily, both while writing the book and right up until he died, talking almost daily to probably the most contacted and attacked human being on the planet, meaning he had extensive experiences with both positive and negative extraterrestrials. I'm kind of an expert on the subject, and I'm telling you, it's really not that important in context to what we're going through right now. When we're through all of this, everybody will be talking to extraterrestrials, okay? But until we get there, don't worry about the extraterrestrials. Don't worry about your relationships. Don't worry about your self-esteem and all this bullshit. What you need to be worried about right now is just living and surviving, because there's a depopulation agenda on now. There is a societal collapse happening now. There is a pulling of the rug on Western currencies, the French franc, the British pound, the US dollar, the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar. They're all going under. And none of our leaders are talking with each other and talking about shoring us up into an economy in which it doesn't matter, meaning we all trade amongst the countries that are losing their currency valuation in the international market. They're problem solved, okay? And just reboot and trade only with the countries whose currencies have been devalued. So you're getting equal share for Australian work, for Canadian work, for New Zealand work, for British work, for American work. And you could easily meet every need you have in terms of produced goods, food, everything just in those 5, 6, or 7 countries. Throw France and Italy in as well, and maybe Portugal. Okay, so there's 8 countries with the 5 eyes plus the 3 Southern European countries. Stop trading with India, stop trading with China, stop trading with Russia, and we have all the oil. Between Alberta and the United States, we have all of our energy needs. We have all of the inventiveness and creativity. Why are we going through this manufactured crisis? And why is a so-called public-facing spiritual teacher like Teal Swan not talking about these things? Ask yourself, okay? Ask yourself. A little bit of a rant there. I took a break to calm down. I get myself so worked up. Here in this paradise, this mountain, I just get myself worked up over nonsense. But that's one thing that gets under my skin is people talking shit about things that matter. Because that's a big part of the problem, right? Huge part of the problem right now. And it's this whole mentality of making a living at something. Okay? So the Teal Swan backstory is she was raised in a house of ritual abuse. I think it was Mormon. Don't quote me on that. I don't mean to offend Mormons. But ritual abuse, sexual abuse, torture, and she is the great survivor, I guess, and transmuted her pain into consciousness, but not really. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people out there now that are from the dark side and they've infiltrated the light side and they're on mission. Okay? How do I know this? I've been told. Corinne Hustabot told me. I used to have calls with her and she would send me URLs and she'd say, watch 5 minutes of this woman speak, and I'd go, wow, that's unbelievable. It's like what Teal Swan claims she went through times 10, like real dark, old world European Satanism, reptoid worship, reptoid offering, bartering with the reptoids, that sort of stuff. And then Corinne would say, Bruce, she's still in the cult. They do this. They send people out. So they're trying to control their own narrative. Okay. And I believe Teal Swan is of that class of person, right? She's probably an intelligence asset of some sort. And there's just a lot of people like that now. And if they're not outright controlled by an intelligence handler, they may have been spoken to and said, look, you can't say this, you can't say this. Or what often happens is you get braced psychically. You get braced in a dream, you get attacked psychically, and it's quite an event. I've had it happen to me in a number of times in my life, not related to related to other stuff, but I've gone through this. You go through it enough times, you get used to it, and you build up a defense to it, like anything else, right? Like I had a friend who did 5 years in prison in Canada, and he said, Bruce, everybody gets tough in prison. If you go in weak, you leave tough because you have to. And it's the same thing with this stuff, right? It's baptism by fire. And that's really what The Devil in Us, A Memoir of You and Me is about. It is a baptism by fire. And the conveyance of the information in the book leading up to the event horizon is this baptism. Now, the negative information has to be understood, because if it's not understood, they can just keep abusing us the same way. And they don't have that many tricks, okay? And once we figure them out, and most of them are in The Devil in Us, once we figure them out, they can't do them anymore. And their game is over, okay? So they have to be spoken about, however unpleasant they are, okay? And you have to know what's going on in the world. And what's going on in the world is exactly what I describe in The Devil in Us. We're in the middle of a Nazi Zionist depopulation of the world. And it appears as though their primary target is white people in Western countries. Now, I've given this a lot of thought, and I've asked myself, is there any legitimate, karmically valid reason for this? Well, yes. If you were to take every human being on the planet and assign a value to their life if they live 80 years. So someone in Costa Rica, these numbers are completely made up, okay? Someone in Costa Rica, in terms of real resources at a wholesale price, okay? Wholesale price, liter of gas, kilogram of rice, kilogram of beans. A Costa Rican might cost, in real dollars, $100,000 to keep that person alive for 80 years. Okay? Not that expensive. A North American is probably more like $5 or $10 million. Okay? The size of the houses, the amount of constructed material in the house, the transportation to bring everything to them, because we don't farm in communities anymore. Here they farm in communities. I mean, I go to a grocery store and everything, but a significant portion of my diet is some dude walking up my driveway with 4 liters in two 2-liter Coke bottles, 4 liters of freshly milked cow milk, okay? Or coming up on a horse with a bag over his shoulder and a strap and pulling the milk out. Or coming up my driveway with a bag with like blocks of 1 kilogram blocks of freshly made cheese. Or a whole arm, like cut with a machete, a whole arm of bananas. You buy them by the bunch in the grocery store. Over here, I buy them green in a bunch of like 100 or 200 or 300 bananas in one branch. And I'll pay maybe $4 for that. And when my wife eats meat, I don't. When somebody slaughters an animal, we get a phone call. They either come to us or we go to them, and we buy 5 kilograms of pork. Or if somebody raises a bunch of chickens, it only takes about 2 months to raise chickens, 7 weeks. You buy them for about $1 a piece when they're chicks, and then you buy the feed, and and in 7 weeks, if you do it right, you can raise them to 2 kilograms, and then the person will harvest all the chickens, 25 or 50 chickens, in 1 or 2 days, and we all go and we buy them. Everybody goes and buys 2 or 3 chickens. So I get my chicken for about $1 a pound. You're paying about $10-12 a pound now, maybe 16 for the breast. Okay, so that's how we do it over here. And so, because everything is based on the land and the land is completely renewable, the cost per life is much lower. The cost per life, when you start jamming people into cities like New York, Toronto, Los Angeles, Chicago, any big city, Vancouver, it goes way, way up because all of this other stuff comes in, transportation. So think of the number of liters of gas or diesel that you would personally use or be responsible for consuming as an add-on value for the price of the merchandise you're buying, as an add-on value for the food you eat, which is all trucked in and flown in and boated in from every part of the world, right? So the cost per life is millions of dollars for a first world life. And then and then what you consume in terms of, like, nobody really travels other than us. I don't know if you know that, but not everybody travels. Most people, the vast majority of human beings, will never leave their country. Okay? Nobody on this mountain I live has ever left Costa Rica. Nobody. And there's maybe 300 people on the mountain. Okay? They're earth-based people. They're community-based people. They're born and they die in the same place. Okay? And again, to repeat myself, because of the way they live in harmony with the earth, the cost per life is much lower. Okay? But it's not a fancy life. It's very simple. Mine is the fanciest life up here. guaranteed. I've got 7 computers. I've got 2 Macs, a MacBook Pro, a Mac Mini with an M1 chip. I've got 3 PC computers. I've got a Linux computer. I've got 5 monitors. I've got a 50-inch TV. I've got 2 other 32-inch TVs. I have the best furniture on the mountain, you know, and I share it with everybody. I mean, I've got a niece in her 30s and her fiance sleeping over tonight. You know, my house is kind of like a hotel for my family, and so and I like it like that. I really like it like that. But so when you look at it from an economic perspective, what is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of ending lives? If the goal is to save money, because all money represents energy now. You understand, right? Money represents calories of food, liters or gallons if you're American of gasoline. Okay? Money represents energy. So if an individual incorporated human being uses 10 times more energy than 80% of the population on the planet, and your goal is to reduce energy consumption on the planet, who's your prime target in the depopulation? This is what I was trying to get at last night when I was talking about gratitude. You know, and we've lost it in North America. We do not have gratitude for life anymore. The people who have gratitude for life are the poor people. Okay? You know, when my son and I went to India in 2012, we spent a month in India. And he's like 13 years old at the time, and he looks at me and he goes, "Dad, everybody here is happy. I mean, they can be living in a cardboard box in an alley, and they're happy. Everybody's always smiling." And I said, "Yeah, I noticed that too." And I said to my son, "I saw the same thing in the slums of Thailand. I saw the same thing. I see that you see the same thing in Central America. Even here in Costa Rica, you've got classes. So you've got like your professional class, because there's a lot of technology companies here now, and this generation has a lot of university graduates, IT, computer science. So they have this professional class as well in Costa Rica, and they're all in San Jose, Cartago, and other cities, right? Grecia, some of the bigger cities where all the offices would be, like the Intel office, the Microsoft office, and stuff like that. And they're like us. They're like the North Americans. They're unhappy for the most, not as unhappy as North Americans, but they're unhappy, right? There's something about getting this easy life that consumes gratitude inside you. And once that gratitude is gone, your quality of life goes, because gratitude is absolutely integral to having a relationship with your creator. You have to be grateful for life, or because your creator gave you life. If you're not grateful for it, do you think your creator really wants to know you? This is all a metaphor, of course. I don't anthropomorphize the creator, but to literalize it, if you want light in your head, you gotta have gratitude. If you want a connection in life, if you want to see miracles in your timeline, if you want to see concatenated synchronicities that could not, a Cray computer, a bank of Cray computers could not come up with a probability matrix for what you explained happened to you, meaning it's a miracle. If you want to live that kind of life, you have to have gratitude. You have to have gratitude, you know? So it's extremely important. So the event horizon is about teaching gratitude. The thing we're going through now is about teaching gratitude. And if you can get the gratitude lesson, you greatly increase your chances of survival, because quite frankly, you're not going to make it without a connection to the creator. Okay? All the non-playing characters are going to go away. It's just that simple, okay? And when the Satanists are done their job, and they're being invoked now for this destructive process, okay? So remember, the left hand and the right hand work together. So the left hand is being invoked now, called to duty like soldiers to do their dirty work, which is killing a whole bunch of people. So all the rat bastards like Macron and Trudeau and Biden are out in full force killing us. because they're crazy, psychotic, and possessed. But even in this creation, nothing is wasted, not even them, because the work they're doing has to be done, and everybody else is too sentimental to do it. It's like everybody wants to eat meat, but very few people can harvest the animal. A lot of people can harvest a chicken. My wife can kill 25 chickens in a day, clean them, gut them, and sell them, right? After raising them for 2 months. Very few people up here can kill a pig, right? Very few people. It's not as easy as you might think. And, you pass the knife around, nobody wants to do it. But they all want the meat once it's ready. Interesting, right? Everybody hates a cop until you're being assaulted. Then the cop's your best friend, right? Everybody hates a soldier in wartime. Baby killer, they screamed at the Vietnam vets returning. You sure want soldiers. You're going to, believe me, in the next year or two, your soldiers are going and veterans are going to be your best friends, okay? Because they're going to be the only thing protecting you from what's coming. It's a crazy, wild, wacky world we're going into, folks. Crazy, wild, and wacky world we're going into, and there's no stopping it, really. Okay, took another little break to regather my thoughts, and I think the final segment I want to talk about another thing that confuses people a lot now, and that is the proliferation of psychic abilities in our society. So, psychic is not spiritual. And this is another big thing that's going on now, okay? So, a lot of these people are very, very sort of psychic, okay? And I've been around some of the most psychic people I've ever known in the last 5 years. And I say that psychic is not spiritual because psychic compared to spiritual is a gross energy and spirit is a subtle energy. Okay? Now, compared to matter, psychic energy is subtle and matter is gross. And because our consciousness is so material, if somebody demonstrates psychic ability, everybody says, oh, that's spiritual. It isn't. Okay? Now, this is extremely important and something that I need to say because so many of the things I've said about the Abrahamic religions at an institutional level have been so negative. A lot of the core teachings are accurate. Okay? You should. When they talk in the Torah about not using witchcraft or divination or necromancy, talking to the dead, or any of these things, that is good spiritual advice. Because if you get used to getting your answers that way, you're not going to look for God. You're not going to look for union with the Creator. And that's what a human life is about. And those energies, those middling energies of interacting with these psychic forces have a reactive charge to them, meaning they cause karma. Okay? The spirits should not be talking to us. So again, let's tie the extraterrestrials into this. So why are there not more positive extraterrestrials helping us deal with the negative extraterrestrials? Well, because we entered into contract with the negative extraterrestrials. That's why. And so the positive ones are not going to interfere with our free will. But if we had never entered into contract with the negative extraterrestrials and we weren't seduced by their technology and their power, they would not be allowed to do the abductions and to do all the negative stuff they're doing with the human race. It would be counterbalanced by something of equal force and power. Because that's the way the universe works. And so when you look at the power imbalance between human beings and the extraterrestrial forces, we've invited into our biosphere and our psychosphere, because it's very astral as well. The positives have to just stand by and say, well, you let the vampire in. They knocked on your door and they said, may I come in? And you said yes. Now you want me to come down and evict them from your home? Well, first of all, have you tried asking them to leave? Which is the first thing to do, okay? Revoke your consent, okay? Revocations, okay? Revoke things and say, look, I do not consent to this. I do not consent to this. A number of years ago, I went through a lot of time in court in Canada. I went through this phase where I don't know how I would describe it, but I had absolute contempt for the government. I was wrong. Okay, I'll freely admit that now. A lot of it was an anger I carried from my divorce and how I was treated in family court, how every man is treated in family court. But I ended up in court a number of times for various things, none of them criminal, all having to do with statute, licensing, and permission of the Queen, as we call it in the Commonwealth. And I used to go into court and I would just continually repeat, I don't consent. Do you understand? No, I don't understand, and I don't consent. Would you state your name for the record? No, I don't understand why you're asking me to do that, and I don't consent to do anything I don't understand. And I just kept doing, and in every instance they had to let me go. They would hassle me a little bit, like keep me in jail for 2, 3 nights, send me to the community jail on the bus with the other inmates, put me in a range, wake me up in the morning, put me on the van back to the court, sit in the jails underneath the court, go up in the elevator, and sometimes they would do that 2 or 3 times to see if they could break me. And if you just hold your ground, eventually they just let you go. They have no choice. But most people can't do that because they can't afford to take 2, 3 days off work, you know. And this is how the whole system works. I would only do this at times when I was in between work contracts. Okay. But it was just really quite something. I mean, I got so known at the largest courthouse in Canada, which is the Brampton Courthouse in the West End of Toronto, just north of Mississauga. I got so known there that the court police officers, the guards for the court, they nicknamed me Kaiser Soze from the usual suspects because the judges didn't know what to do with me, right? And they would go, man, like, how do you do that? I've never seen anybody come in here and do that. And some of the guards would say, man, you lost 3 days of work and you've been in jail for 3 days. And I'd say, yeah, but I have no criminal record, and they weren't able to charge me with anything. So, and I did that simply by saying, I don't consent. I do not consent. I do not consent, right? Another thing is if you get pulled over by a police officer and they come up to the side of the car and they go license and registration, please, ask for a lawyer. Ask for a state attorney right away that they pay for. Say, I'd like a lawyer, please. Well, you haven't been charged. Well, you've begun a legal process, and I'm entitled to legal representation. I don't have a lawyer on retainer. It's the state's responsibility to provide me with a lawyer. They don't have to physically come here, but call one, and I want the lawyer on speakerphone as I interact with you. Be on your way, sir. They just let you go, right? Now, I have some other friends who tried it, and they just got the shit beat out of them, right? But it's all how you carry yourself. So, I've had a very colorful life, and there's a lot of things that have gone into leading up to these books and leading up to the perspective I have now, an intense amount of spiritual work, an intense amount of social work and social conflict with the systems, to realize by my own experience that they are as corrupt as I'm telling you they are in these books, like The Light of Darkness and The Devil in Us. And then Robert Wiegand comes in and just takes it 2 or 3 orders of magnitude beyond that. And he says, it's actually this dark, Bruce. Okay? It's so dark what's going on this planet now that most people, if the curtain was just pulled back and they could see it, they would immediately have a nervous breakdown and have to be put into an asylum and narcotized for 2 weeks just to calm their nerves down. However bad you think it is, it's worse. Okay? However bad you think the devil... I hear from people all the time, Bruce, I love your books, but I can't recommend them to anybody because I don't want to shock my friends. I don't know if they're ready for this. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. Don't worry about it. I'm not asking you to recommend my book. If you do, that's great. But I understand. I totally get that. But the truth is, the devil in us is even more, is even watered down. It's worse than that. Okay? It's beyond anything you could imagine in terms of trading human beings. I just saw a story again the other day. There are thousands of children missing and unaccounted for from the Maui fires. The parents, they know where the parents are. Okay? They found the bones of the parents burned. They identified them through DNA, through dental records, through various means. But the schools burned down too, but the children weren't in the schools. The children were taken away by bus. And there's thousands of children missing. Okay? Now, I'm not trying to shock you or freak you out, but I am trying to give you a charge in your prayer, in your petition to the divine. Please, I need to know what's going on. This is hurting my heart. Okay? That is part of what I'm trying to do. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Okay? A lot of stuff I talked about tonight. If the people you're listening to aren't telling you what's going on in the world, why it's going on, and how to survive, stop listening to them. You don't need the teal swans of the world. You don't need the shamanic healers. Well, maybe you do, but you know, you don't need your congregation and your Bible. Okay, you just need to know the truth, and when that is understood, then ask for the divine, and it'll come in, because the divine is the ultimate truth. Okay, so the creator and the creator in your consciousness is the ultimate truth in your life. And you're not going to get that truth, which is the positive truth, until you've suffered with the truth of the world you live in. Because it's that suffering which forms the call to the divine that makes the connection. Okay? And if you think I'm being dramatic here, you simply have not read spiritual biographies. St. Francis of Assisi, Milarepa, Ibn Arabi, the list goes on and on and on and on. There's just too many to count. All the great Islamic poets, the Sufi poets from the 1800s, Bulleh Shah, read their biographies, man. Read the biography of Rumi, Buddha. Just how did Buddha? You know the story of Gautama Siddhartha, right? Who became the Buddha. He asks to leave the palace one day, or he just left without his parents' consent. He went out on some servants in the palatial grounds, which was all walled off and the door was closed, but it was a big palace in India. He leaves the palace one day. He sees the suffering of people, never recovered, could not get rid of that suffering, and commenced his process to become the Buddha, and left the path for everybody else. But how did it start? It started with intense suffering. And this is why so-called spiritual teachers who are massaging your ego and trying to create better sex for you in a relationship, that's not a fucking spiritual teacher. That's a charlatan trying to get money out of your pocket. Okay? I guess that's about enough for tonight. I don't know what the hell I'm going to title this. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.